It all kind of started when we lived over on H Highway. There's a place that Philip Askey used to own. Mm-hmm. Now, we were all young men, teenagers, and my youngest brother was 4 or 5 years old. And we would, it was a strange place. And we knew it was a strange place. There was something going on there because the old boy that built the house had fog lights on every corner of the house. 2 here, 2 there, I mean every corner. And he could light that valley up. So we knew at some point he was afraid of something. Something was out there. We didn't ask any questions. I was a kid, who am I to ask? Mm-hmm. But throughout the day, middle of the day, middle of the night, there's some old farm equipment and stuff down there in the holler between the house and the road, and something would be banging on that thing. And we didn't know what it was. I mean, I thought the doggone place was haunted, but we were kids. We didn't know what we was hearing. And there was a little creek bed between the road, and we get down there and play in the creek. Well, one day we was out there swimming in the little creek bed, and I heard my name. And I heard my brother's name. And I thought, I'm gonna figure out what that was. It sounded like it was up the creek, so I walked up the creek a little bit. And you could hear a couple of rocks, like rocks being hit together. And we kept following, and it just stayed ahead of us. So we just turned around and came back, and we're swimming in the creek, and a little line of brush between us and the field. Not a whole lot, not a bunch of briars, but just a little bit of brush. And I can see little pebbles coming. You can see them hit the water. And you can look around and you didn't see anything. Every once in a while, another little rock would hit the water. We knew something was around, but we didn't know what it was. We knew enough to keep our eyes on it, but not enough to take off for the house. I mean, because we played in the water. We're going to play for a while. Things of that nature happened quite a bit. My brother and I was standing up at the end of that road. I was about the 6th grade, 7th grade. We're waiting on the school bus, and Robin Chapman, he was the bus driver. Now we're waiting on him to come by. And we were standing, I guess, be on the north side of H Highway, just standing there waiting at the bus stop. And we heard something crashing. It sounded like it's crashing through the woods, like somebody's throwing a bunch of rocks. And me and my brother turned around and looked, and we seen rocks. I mean, they're just coming out of the tree line. And we run across the road to kind of get away from the area. We didn't know what it was. And in fact, we hightailed it back to the house. We wasn't gonna stick around and see what was gonna come out of the woods.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a day or so later, my little brother, he was up there waiting on the bus. He looked down, or we both were, he looked down, and said, well, look at that. He said, there's an arrowhead, and he found a perfect arrowhead. And underneath that arrowhead was a fresh cow's tongue. Yeah. I have no idea what the heck that was all about. But, we still never seen anything. We just seen the results of something was happening around us, but we never got to lay eyes on it. And we were just young, like I said, young kids at the time. Well, several years later, I'm working out at a sawmill. I'm about 19 years old, and a buddy of mine said, I need you to take me someplace hunting. My buddy from St. Louis is coming down. We want to see some action. Take us someplace where we can see we're actually going to be able to shoot at something. I said, all right, I got you. So I took him down to the other side of the park, the other side of Big Springs. I went up this old log road, and we set our camp on top of the ridge. We went into town and got us something to eat. And as we came back about 10:30 that night, as you come up that road, there was a campsite here. Ours was at the top. There was another campsite on the other side of the ridge. This campsite here had rocks around the fireplace, had been knocked out, kind of scattered, and the fire had kind of got out. A busted windshield on an old Ford Bronco. The door was open on the camper, slamming around. I don't even know where them people were. They wasn't nowhere around it. And the tent on the other side of ours, was like somebody took it and just drug it through the woods. I figured everybody got drunk and just had themselves a good old time. Well, we sit down in the tent. You got one buddy over here and his buddy over here. You got Chuck and Max. And I was sitting there in the middle. And we laid down, we're talking for a little bit, and I could hear something walking up. And it's pretty wide open. And I'm hearing some long strides. The nearest brush, I'm gonna say it here to that shed, 30, 40 foot away from us. So we was in a pretty good wide open area. And I heard something walk up. And I thought, hey, there ain't no way that's a deer in the middle of the night coming up to check out our fire or whatever it is. But I got up, unzipped the tent and walked around and looked, and I didn't see anything. I got back in the tent, sat down, fixing to lay back down on my sleeping bag, and I heard it again. Something come up. And it's taken about 3 steps to get to us. And I said, something ain't right. And I come out of the tent. And I said, Max, where is my rifle? He said, I locked them in the pickup. You're never going to lock your rifle up in a pickup. If you're hunting, something needs to be with you. So I said, give me the keys. And I got my rifle. And I got Max's rifle, or Chuck's rather. I got back in the tent, and I no more than sat down, zipped the tent back up. And I hear something come up from the side, something come up from this side. And between me and the fire, about as close as me to David, a silhouette of something came up between us. I could see something standing. I didn't ask questions. I pulled the rifle, put it through the bottom of the tent where the 3 zippers connect. I pulled the trigger, I chambered it, I pulled the trigger and chambered it again. And while I'm shooting out the bottom of the tent, Chuck's shooting through the tent. And I come out of there, and he said, what is it? And I said, I don't have any idea. I said, but if it comes at you, you better start shooting. And we started pulling the trigger. I emptied a .44 Magnum. He emptied a .308. We reloaded. I didn't see anything that was going on, but whatever it was, took about 3 strides, and it was gone. We didn't see it. He seen something coming up behind me. He seen its eyes. He said they were kind of like it was glowing in the fire. I said, just keep shooting. His buddy was grabbing everything we could grab and just throwing it in the back of the pickup truck. And while he was loading it, we were shooting. We were fixing to take off, and right in front of me, where the fire was, between where I was and the fire, I found a piece of a shoulder blade. What I think was a shoulder blade. It still had the meat on it, and it had some blood on it. Didn't think much more about it. I jumped in the truck, we left. The next morning, I went in town, and I got a hold of the sheriff, and I told him, if anybody has called an ambulance, have got a hole in them, if anybody's complained about being shot, I said, you come and talk to me, because they were the ones that we figured we were gonna be a sack lunch to somebody. You're in a tent, you pull the stakes up on the side of a tent, and close it up, you ain't coming out of it unless you got a knife and you're slicing your way out. We figured somebody was up to no good. There was never a report of anybody being shot. Nobody had complained about being shot at. So whatever it was that wound up having, a bone blowed out of it, there was never a report of anything. And it wasn't up till many years later that I started thinking maybe it wasn't a person. Somebody would have reported it. Then I started putting a lot of this together. What my brothers and I dealt with when we were younger. What we dealt with out there. My son had something cross in front of the property 2 miles from where I live now. 28 minutes from here. They seen something look in the window of the cabin where him and his young wife, something had spooked them. She screamed. They jumped outside, was going to get in the car and just leave. That thing took about 4 steps, and it made about 40 yards, just real fast steps, and it was gone. They left the property and wouldn't go back till the next day. Neither one of us has ever laid eyes on whatever this might be. All we can do is speculate as what we think it is, but it's intelligent enough to make a decision. What got me when I was hunting that day it didn't want anybody around camping. It was running everybody off. And we were the last ones at the campsite that night, about 10:30 or 11 o'clock. And it wanted us gone too. But there was enough intelligence, it was going to surround the place, or around our tent. And it was either going to drag us off down a hillside, or Lord only knows what was going to happen. But I wasn't going to stick around to find out. And we had a rifle, and I was going to use it. But to this day, I don't know. I mean, I can take you right back to the place if the trees wasn't blocking the road. I could take you right back to the campsite where it was. But every bit of it is within, as the crow flies, about 40 mile distance from where we are right now. My brothers, of course, one of my brothers, I was going to ask to come over here with me. He can remember a whole lot more. He's a little bit older, and there's things that he dealt with that I haven't. But with these fires going on, he couldn't be here. But like I said, I dealt with a lot. A lot of it was 20 minutes here, 30 minutes there, or if I was a kid, there's a lot of it I don't remember. But throughout my life, up until, I'm gonna say about 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I dealt with it quite a bit. We've always lived in rural areas. When Mom and Dad got divorced, we would always live in a farmhouse out in the middle of nowhere, or we'd go hunting, literally away from everybody. So we was always in an area away from people. And was always within the area where we're pretty much living right now. So whatever it is that is out there, whatever they want to call it, a family or a pod or whatever they decide they want to call it, there's several groups. And I don't know if some of them might be more violent than others, or if they just get tired of people. And I think some of them are curious. They're as curious about us as we are them. But not as curious, not curious enough to allow us to just see them. I'd love to have one of them, I ain't gonna say walk up and shake my hand, but if I'm out there in the field and I see one of them come out, I think I'll be mesmerized. I won't be able to unlock my eyes off of it. I've always been intrigued by it. And if I were retired, I'd do the same thing you're doing right now. My wife, not so much. But it's something I've always been interested in, mainly because I've seen too much to just ignore what we've dealt with. Coming up here, I passed a road that my grandpa used to own some property way back down in the holler. There again, 25 miles from here. We were camping up in the woods, and we're just little kids. We're in a tent. My grandma and grandpa's in the camper of their pickup truck. And behind the fire flicker, you could see something kind of peek out from behind a pickup truck or behind the trees. It was moving back and forth like it was trying to check us out. And my uncle asked if that was Grandpa. He said, "Dad, is that you?" And he said, "What are you talking about? Go back to bed." I have no idea what it was. All we were seeing was silhouettes of things. And as big as these things can get, I just have no idea how they can be so doggone quiet. But they can sneak up. I guarantee you, if you're sitting out there, they could tap you on the shoulder and you'd never know they're coming up until they're right there.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know much more about, what you would want to know. Like I said, I haven't dealt with it as extensively as he has. But I've just dealt with it in small areas. Mm-hmm. But every bit of it is just within 30, 40 miles from right here where we're sitting right now.
Okay. I appreciate you for sharing that.
Yep, no problem, bud.
When you guys were in the hunting blind, how big did the silhouettes look?
Oh, that was a tent.
Or the tent?
The tent. It was a head and a half above, taller than me. When I was sitting on the floor of the tent, mm-hmm. It wasn't like I was looking at a man. I was looking up above the zipper, and when I was pointing the rifle, I was pointing up. I'm going to say any bit of 7.5, 8 foot tall. I knew it was big.
Was it just one or multiple?
I seen the one. Mm-hmm. What we heard was two more off to the sides of us. They come up behind the tent, and one of them had stepped in the front, and that's the one I was going after. That's the one I thought it was a person that was up to no good, and I wasn't going to mess around with it. And I figured if they're going to have the guts to do this, they better have the guts to be shot at, and he got shot at. The other two that was on the sides, all we could hear when I pulled the trigger the first time, and as I was chambering, you could hear something take about 4 big leaps. I mean, just, and after a couple of steps, it was out of sight. That's when we come out of the tent, because I'm not going to sit in a tent and be something's, sack lunch. I'm coming out. And like I said, as we come out of the tent, I just started shooting the direction. I heard something. Now, I don't want to harm, never wanted to harm any of these things. And I've heard about them my whole life. Sasquatch, Bigfoot, MOMO. Depending on what part of the country you're from. I've heard about them my whole life. I never even considered that then, never even thought about it. I just knew there's people camping around us. I figured somebody got drunk and they were messing around, and I wasn't gonna mess with them. I thought if I shot one time, somebody would say, hey man, it's us, don't worry, we're just messing around. There wasn't nobody screamed, nobody hollered, nobody cussing, nobody carrying on. And that's what would happen if you're shooting at a person. There's gonna be verbal interaction as well as gunfire, so to speak. There wasn't nothing. We just heard something take about 4 or 5 leaps. I seen a big old log, and I figured that's where that one went that I was shooting at, and I kept shooting that direction. And we were just putting lead in the air to keep whatever it was away from us till we got out of there. I've got no desire to harm any of them, but I didn't know then what we're dealing with. Like I said, I figured just a bunch of drunks.
Mm. Did you guys see eye shine?
He did. Chuck did.
It was like an ember color?
He said it looked like 2 brake lights.
Oh, wow.
He said they were coming, as I was shooting this way, he was shooting back behind the tent. And he said, Jerry, I see 2 eyes. He said, they're as bright as brake lights. I said, shoot at the eyes. I don't care what it is at this point. Shoot. If they're coming at us. And he said it made a mad dash toward him about 10 or 15 yards, and they vanished. Like it ducked down or turned another direction. Mm-hmm. But I didn't see it. My buddy had told his daughters about this years ago, and she just thought, oh, you guys are just probably drunk out in the middle of the woods. And I talked to her probably a month ago, and I said, there was a story your dad told you when you was a little girl about something that happened out in the woods, and I talked to her about it, and she said, yeah. I said, well, your dad isn't crazy. It happened. I said, I was the one that was with him. But all these years, she thought her dad was just kind of making this stuff up. And I said, no, he didn't make it up. I told her word for word, story for story, what he had told her. But
it's kind of nice when someone else validates a story like this, because you think it's just, someone making it up.
Yeah, she thought her dad had got drunk, and I said, no, we hadn't been drinking. I mean, like I said, I was only 19. Now, I'm not saying I wasn't drinking at 19, but we were out hunting. And we just got back from the Jolly Cone. We were out eating dinner. Just going to get ready to get up the next morning to go hunting. But no, there wasn't no drinking going on. And I told his daughter, I said, no. I said, it happened. And I told her about, a quick version. And she said, you're telling me everything Dad said. And all these years, past, 30 years, we thought Dad was telling the story, and he told it a lot. And his story never varied. I said, well, I can verify it, because I was the one that was standing there with him that day, shoulder to shoulder shooting. She said, well, I thought he was crazy. Yeah. No, he's not crazy.
That's interesting, because with my experience with the Sasquatch, I've noticed they'll travel in 3s most of the time. And that's kind of what you described. Yep. It seemed like they kind of triangulated around you.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That was the part that I didn't understand, because, see, back then I wasn't considering Sasquatch. I was considering witchcraft, and I was going to be somebody's sacrifice, or somebody got drunk, and we were into a camping area they wanted, and we were just fixing to have a lot of problems. Whatever the situation was, I was going to go out shooting. And like I said, I unloaded a 44, and he unloaded a 308, and he reloaded. So
And you found a chunk of bone and meat?
About like that.
Did you keep it? Well, I guess that was a long time ago.
No, I didn't keep it.
See any black hairs or anything on it?
I seen...
Brown hair or anything?
No, best that I can remember. I seen it on the ground. I picked it up real quick and looked at it and threw it back down. We were looking to... We were going to lift and shift. That's what we were doing. Mm-hmm. We didn't know what it was. And it was a few weeks later, I guess. I went back out there, and of course, I didn't see anything. And if there was anything left over, a predator, scavenger would have picked it up. Rat or something would have picked it up and chewed on it. But at that time, I wasn't looking for any kind of hair or anything. I just figured I seen a part of a bone laying on the ground. I seen the meat, and the thing it still had the blood on it. I knew it was fresh, and I knew I got something. That's why I went into town the next morning and told them, if you find somebody that's got a hole in them, you come talk to me. And there wasn't ever a report of anything. But I know I got something.
Yeah.
And had I known what it was, if I'd known they was in the area, we wouldn't have been up there. And had I known that's what it was, I probably wouldn't have been shooting. Because all you can do is make one mad.
What do you think would have happened if you didn't shoot?
If we hadn't shot at it, I believe that was going to rip that tent apart, and we were fixing to get drugged through the woods while we were in the tent. I have no idea whatever happened to those people that was camping. They may have been from out of the area. I don't know if they jumped in another vehicle and took off. The people that was in the other tent, I've never heard anything from them. I didn't know any of these other folks. We were just camping in an area they were camping to. But I would say they left the area and just never come back. I'm going to come back. I live around here. I mean, shoot, just down the road from Big Tree. I mean, I still go down that area quite a bit. I don't know what would have happened, but I knew it wasn't going to be good, because knowing now what I believe it was, we were in their area, and they wanted us gone, and they were going to go to whatever extreme we was going to push it to. Now, I think they're intelligent enough to either run you off, and if you're going to shoot back or if you're going to fight back, they're going to do damage. If I had known then that if I had looked out and said, okay, we're looking at Sasquatch, I would have kept pulling the trigger for my own defense. But if I'd known they were in that area, we wouldn't have been there in the first place. You're not going to walk into somebody else's house and take over without having them decide otherwise. It was their area, it's their home. And where we were, I'd say was probably close to their living room. I mean, it happened too quick for them to just decide to come, 2 miles from wherever. And where it happened is out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, it's right there on the river. It's away from, there's no electric. I mean, there's nothing down there but gravel road and log roads.
So there is a waterway nearby?
Oh yeah, big fields, lots of deer. Yeah.
Okay. How far away were you from the water?
Half a mile.
Okay.
You got the river down here, you got a field, you got a ridge. We're up here on top of the ridge.
So pretty close.
Oh yeah.
What time of year was it? Do you remember the month?
I'm going to say November. I mean, it was first of deer season. Just around Thanksgiving, when deer season starts, we were out there right at the start of deer season.
Did you notice anything strange that day prior to this experience?
No. Never noticed anything. We set the tent up. We got up there after work, so it was a little bit late. We set the tent up and everything, kind of got a little fireplace set up. Then we decided we was going to go in town and eat. Instead of trying to make something to eat then, we was going to run in town, grab something to eat, and just make a quick night of it, come back, get up the next morning and go hunting. But we wasn't out there long enough to set the tent up to even consider anything or to see anything out of the ordinary. The campers and stuff that was sitting beside us, they were up the road from us. They were just chilling out getting their camps and stuff together. There wasn't anything that I would consider enough to catch my attention, put it like that.
Okay. And what happened after you guys fired at it? Did you just go to bed? And
No, we grabbed that tent, we grabbed everything we could, we balled it up in the back of a pickup truck, and we got out of their area. We actually just drove down the gravel road, went back about 1.5 miles, and went down in the field to kind of gather ourselves. By this time it's midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. So we just parked the pickup truck, sat in the field, and we decided we're gonna stay there for the night. And we sat there with a rifle, and we were in the field. I wanted to make sure that I could see anything coming. So I told my buddies, a friend from St. Louis, you park in the field, park the headlights or the truck facing the direction we come from, and if anything's coming out, I want to be able to see it. And then we sat there half the night trying to figure out just what the heck it was, because ain't nobody going to sleep.
Yeah. Did you see a lot of blood whenever you found the chunk of meat?
I didn't see a lot of blood,
Okay.
no.
You thought you shot someone?
I thought I shot somebody, but I didn't hear anybody hooping or hollering or screaming or carrying on.
Yeah, that's the unusual thing. Typically, if you shoot at someone, they're going to say, hey, hey.
Yeah, they're gonna, there's gonna be some sort of...
Don't shoot.
Yeah. Yeah, or...
It was just dead silent, huh? Could you hear the impact of the round? I guess with like a .308 and a .40, it's a pretty fast moving bullet.
Yeah, and in fact, at that close a range, but with everything that was happening, as quick as it was happening, my heart was racing. I mean, at this point, I figured it's come up 3 or 4 different times, and this time it came up quick enough. It came between me and the fire. I felt as though it was trying to surround us, or at least get on the sides of us. I wasn't thinking about hearing anything. I was thinking, shoot first, think about it later. And that's what we done.
Do you think they knew that you guys had firearms? Because typically they watch people, and a lot of folks say, oh, they won't approach you if you got a firearm. But in this case, they were in the tent.
The firearms weren't in the tent first.
No.
They were in the pickup truck.
Yeah, you got them out of the vehicle.
I don't think they was concerned about the firearms.
But by that point, once you got them out of the vehicle, they knew that you had them.
They knew I had something. They seen me go to the truck and get something and come back to the tent.
They didn't care.
Yeah.
No,
something. And see, at this point, I'm thinking, okay, we're talking about mid-'80s. Used to be a lot of witchcraft and craziness, people playing silly things. I figured I was going to be somebody's witch sacrifice, and they were going to pull the tent stakes up, and we were going to be somebody's sacrifice, and we couldn't get out of this tent. Like I said, it wasn't until years later that I started putting all this together. But it was close enough. Take about 3 steps away, 3 large steps away, and it would vanish into the woods. We walked, or we got out, walked to the truck. As close as from here to that little step ladder. I mean, it was parked right beside the tent. I got out, got the rifles, came back in. Whatever it was close enough. By the time I sat down and I pulled it back together, and they were there. They wasn't going to give us time to jump back out again and say, is anybody here? And I'd done that twice. Whatever it was, seen me grab something. And they didn't care. They were coming up. That's when I got scared, because somebody or something seen me grab the rifle, and they still had the guts enough to approach that quick. If they got that kind of guts, there ain't no telling what was fixing to happen, and I was going to make sure I was going to fight my way out.
Yeah. And these eyes, were they self-illuminated, or was there a light being cast on them?
No,
fire or a flashlight?
He seems to think they were self-illuminated, because they were coming up from behind the tent, and the fire was in front of the tent. Now, by this time, the tent was being just kind of shoved down into a big old pile, because we didn't fold nothing up. And my buddy's the one that seen the eyes. He said they looked like 2 brake lights coming at him. And that being the case, he seems to think that they were kind of self-illuminating. there again, that was one of the reasons I wasn't sure what it was. Didn't know a lot about Sasquatch back then. Heard about it my whole life, but I've only heard stories. Nobody would talk about the interactions that they would have with it. I don't know how their eyes glow, if they illuminate on their own. Some people think that they can move from between time and space, and they're over here and then they can appear over there. I don't know any of that. All I know is something's out there and it wants to be left alone. Mm-hmm. If it will interact with you, it'll interact on its own time and its own pace, and when it's done messing with you, it just won't mess with you anymore. If you continue to push and push and push, it's going to push back.
From a physical point of view, I can see why they're out there. There's a ton of forest out there, waterways, all kinds of food, and it is strange that you mentioned the witchcraft. Maybe there's like people practicing the occult. If they are doing things like that, in theory, that could open up a doorway.
Yeah.
And there could be a connection there as well. Was there actually people out there doing that type of stuff? Many,
many years ago, there was groups of people that was doing it. And when my brothers and I lived down H Highway, we actually thought that's what it was. My dad had even said thought he heard people, chanting, hooping, and hollering back away from the house. But see, the hooping and the hollering that he heard back then
could have been Sasquatch.
It could have been. Mm-hmm.
What river was this? Do you want to say on camera? You don't have to.
No, it's Current.
The Current River?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that makes sense. So there's a connection with David's farm here at the Killing Fields and the area that you were camping at. Mm-hmm. They say they follow the waterways. I read this the other day and it kind of blew my mind that a black bear can travel 40 miles in one day. If a black bear can do that,
well,
these things can do it very easily. So they could get here in one day from your area.
Yeah. They'll make a lot bigger stride than a bear.
Yeah. If you try to like pursue a deer that's just walking, you'll never catch up to it, let alone running.
Right. Yeah. And I don't know if there's one pod or family, however you want to refer to them, or if there's two or three. I don't think that there's one individual Sasquatch. You can't have one and have it live. The 56 years I've been hearing about this, they're going to multiply. They're going to have their little families, pods, and they're going to have them. There might be two or three in this area. There might be more. There might be two and just have big families. There isn't any telling.
Yeah. I'm sure there's multiple family groups just in this area, let alone all of Missouri. I'm sure there's a lot of family groups. And you're right, they do have little ones. I don't know where people got the notion that there's just one.
Yeah.
Because I've had people ask me, is there just one Bigfoot? I'm like, well, no.
Well, if there is, there's one in Washington. You got one here. I mean, how are they going to continue to live? They're a mammal. Mm-hmm. They're going to multiply.
Absolutely.
It's just like, any other creature that's going to survive. They're going to have offspring. That's all there is to it.
Absolutely. What other experiences have you had throughout your life? Can you remember any other strange things that have happened?
Not really. Not off the top of my head. Like I said, my brothers had different experiences with it, but I can't speak for them because I'm sure if I did, details would be completely off.
Well, just offhand, what did they tell you?
Well, my brother's got a place out here, just not far from my place. He's had one that just probably 8.5 foot tall, walk through his property, and he's got a big oak tree that he would pull an engine from. He said he could walk. He's seen something walk past it, and its head, the head of that thing, the shadow that he's seen was about as high as the tree branch. And you're talking about 8 foot high. And a lot of the experience I was talking to you about already my brothers have dealt with, but they remember different details of it. It's more the perspective that we were at. My oldest brother, when me and my younger brother were going to school, my older brother stayed home to take care of our younger brother, because there's 4 of us. And he would hear screaming around the house. One time, me and my brothers went with my mom. We went to the drive-in, and my dad had a girlfriend over. They're chilling out at the house, and he heard what he called the most god-awful scream, and something just slammed against the side of the house. He didn't know what it was, and if he did, he didn't tell us. We now know what it was. My oldest brother we had a small house, so he would sleep on a couch in a den. And he heard one night, we all heard it, but there's a window beside the couch that he was sleeping on. And he said it sounded like a lady screamed. It was just like she'd almost being stabbed. I mean, just a blood-curdling scream. He bolted up off that couch and went into the other room, and we all heard it, but he had almost a first-hand experience from it because it was right there with him. You know, it was just outside the house. But like I said, that house, the people that built that house, or at least had it before we moved into it, they knew something was out there, because on every corner of the house was fog lights. And when they started hearing things, or at night, they'd turn on every one of them lights, and they were floodlights. It would shine that valley up. So the old boy that owned that place would turn them on to keep whatever it was, either keep it at bay or keep it where he could see it coming at him. But the old house is still standing. It's almost fallen in, but it's still there, and somebody owns some property, or has built a house back behind it. But
how far away is the old house from the river incident where you guys were camping?
Oh, shoot. By the way the crow flies, I'm gonna say about 20 miles.
Okay. So how big of like a territory do you think these things have?
I'm gonna say about a 40, 50 mile radius. I mean, if you figure this to be the furthest point, and where I was hunting, you take it by the road, 30 minutes down to my place, another 35 minutes down to there. So you're looking at almost an hour drive from here. From here back to, shoot, how far is Peck Ranch from here?
Like 30, 40 minutes, isn't it?
There you go. And
that's by Van Buren, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
I interviewed a guy from Van Buren who had seen Sasquatch, and he killed some giant hogs and put them on the back of his property and went back the next day, and they were completely gone. But his property bordered Peck Ranch.
Yeah. There's a lot of area. But I think that they're going to move within about I'm going to say easy 50 mile coverage area. They're going to move with their food. These fires that's happening is going to push them. They're going to have a place to push to. The windstorms, the tornadoes, torrential downpour rains, they're going to have a place that they can go to for comfort, for safety. And there's too many caves around here. Hidden caves, just little holes up into the hillsides. They're going to have a place they can go to. I don't think they're going to be sitting out here in this mess that tornado went through with a leaf over their head like a monkey. They're intelligent enough. They have a go-to.
Yeah,
they almost have to.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Like, they know what to do whenever there's a tornado or bad storms, fires, logging. They have a routine.
When there's a push, they have a go-to place. They have to. The intelligence that these things have got. I mean, when they communicate with one another, they coordinate with one another. They design and put together something, or somehow or another between themselves to they coordinate a hunt, or to coordinate to push somebody out of the area, or like they did with me when when we were camping. So anything with that kind of intelligence probably got a cave or some place that they can go to get out of the weather, to get out of the wind, to get out of the snow and ice.
Yeah, I think so. I bet they probably are able to sense that a bad storm's coming before it even gets here. Kind of like how horses can sense.
Right.
You know, they can tell when an earthquake's going to happen. So these things, like you said, they might go into a cave, and no one's going to be out there during like tornado weather,
Nope.
deep out in the woods at one of the caves, not at nighttime.
No, and I know as the area grows and people build houses, they're gonna push back to a certain point, but they're curious. I believe that they're a curious kind of a creature. They will push back to a point, but I think all but coming in and looking in your window, I think they'll stay close enough to keep you in their eyesight. If they went out there and started cutting the timber down, I believe they'd be out there watching. If they're going to be in the area, they're going to keep their eyes on, see what's going on.
After you shot, could you hear it taking off?
I heard it take about 2 steps,
Okay.
and then it vanished.
Did it sound like a thump? Like,
Oh yeah, big, heavy thump.
okay.
And see, that's what got me though. It took about 2 steps, 2 very long strides, and it vanished. The only place it could have gotten to was the brush was as far away from me to that tree out there. And there was an old dead log or something laying back there. So we're talking about 2 strides, and we're talking 30 feet. This thing made about 2 or 3 lunges, and it was gone. So I just kept focused on that area. Because if it's going to come up, it's going to come up from that area. That's when Chuck started seeing them back here behind me.
Could you smell anything?
But I couldn't remember if I did.
Yeah.
Like I said, I was scared to death, and the only senses I was dealing with was my eyesight. I had to see something, and if I didn't see it, if I heard something, I was gonna shoot that direction. At that point, my only train of thought was keep it at bay and let's get the heck out of here.
Was there a lot of pine trees in the area? Well, I guess it's hard to remember, huh?
Well, there was. It was a lot of. It was. I believe at one time it was a decking yard because it was pretty wide open up on top. That's one of the reasons we chose to put the tent there. It was open enough. We didn't have to move a lot of brush. So, like I said, I was probably 19 at the time. So, probably 10 or 15 years before that, there was an old log road and at the top of a bridge. It was a decking yard. So it was clear enough. There was timber around us. And if I'm remembering right, just as at the front of the tent, there was some cedar and some pine off to one side, but a scrub brush and saplings back behind us.
Pretty thick woods though, like natural woods. It hadn't been logged or anything.
No, it hadn't been logged in a long time.
Okay.
In fact, at that point, that area probably wouldn't be logged because it was just a couple miles off the park, and the timber wasn't big enough at that point to log off again.
Okay. What attracted you to the area during that time? Were you guys seeing like a lot of bucks or a lot of deer, turkeys?
I've hunted around there my whole life.
So you knew there was good game in there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I've still got family and buddies and I still hunt the area myself.
Doesn't creep you out being there?
No.
Okay. Do you ever camp there at night anymore?
Don't have to camp there.
Yeah.
I got family that lives close by, and if I want to drive down, I'll just run it on down. I try to get my wife to go out there with me. She won't do it.
Yeah.
And I'm too old to camp. If I got to carry a tent, I can't do it. I got to have my back just won't do it anymore. And it was too rough a road to get a camper up. And like I said, I know where the road is, and I know where the place is. I don't know if it's been growed up because I hadn't been back up to that spot in 25 years, probably close to 35 years.
Yeah. There's a lot of wilderness around here, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Like around the Current River Conservation Area, the Sunk Lands, what's it called, Logan? Shoot, what's it called? Where you got property at? There's another conservation up there, but I mean, it's just, there's not like a border, just one area. It's just a massive woods.
Right.
Between all these conservation areas and the Mark Twain National Forest. I mean, it's forest from what I've seen all the way south of I-44 going into Arkansas. So
Yeah.
that's half the state,
Well,
if not more.
Yeah, if you're looking at the Ozark Mountains, anything I-44 over to Branson, that area. I don't know if you've done a lot of, and you're driving down through Branson, but that's some woolly country.
It is. It really is.
If something wanted to hide, it could hide. If they wanted to stay, if they wanted to exist and never be seen, the Ozark Mountains is the place to do it.
Yeah. And I mean, even north of I-44, it's big woods too, but
Yeah.
I'm just saying, south, that's like where the Mark Twain is.
Right.
A lot of thick woods.
Yeah.
Because you go north of I-44, it's big woods, but there's also a lot of farmland.
Yeah,
So I can see.
It starts to become more flat.
It does.
Up north of Lebanon in that area, it kind of levels out, and you get up north of 70, and it's more kind of like the plains area. It flattens out.
Mm-hmm. Which I still get reports up there too.
Oh yeah.
But down here, there seems to be more of them. But
Right.
it could happen anywhere.
Yeah.
There's sightings in Illinois, Iowa, and that's farmland. Like, people are seeing these things in the corn.
Kind of makes you wonder where they're going to hide out in something like this. I mean, around here, we all know if we know a storm's coming, I guarantee it. Between the three of us, somebody knows a hole that we can get into within the next 4 or 5 miles to dodge a tornado. I mean, we would know where to go. We would know how to get out of a storm. Well, if them things are up there in the flatland, Indiana, Illinois, and if a tornado comes through, kind of makes you wonder where they're going to go. I mean, what do they call home up there?
Yeah, it just shows how good they are.
Yeah.
It's amazing. But I mean, yeah, it makes sense out here. It's big
Yeah.
woods.
Yeah.
Kind of thought there was something strange, but yeah, when you think of areas like that, Illinois, it's like, what the
Yeah.
heck? When they cut the corn, where are they going?
Yeah, I mean, you just cut down everything they're hiding behind. And around here, the more the people grow and the homes are developed, they'll push back into more like Peck Ranch or deeper into the woods, more on the conservation, because they're not going to build on conservation. The people aren't going to build there. If they're going to hunt in places like that, it's a special drawing, so there's not going to be as many people hunting in there. And, buddy, they got the cream of the crop. I mean, you got deer, you got elk. I mean, their food supply, their water supply, everything they need, and they're not going to be bothered by people.
So like rifle hunting, bow hunting, it's off limits?
It's off limits unless it's a special drawing. You got to have, you got to put your name in, and then they might draw 40 or 50 people to be able to hunt it throughout the deer season. And once that's done, that's it. There ain't no more hunting in there. And there's some big game in there. It's a wildlife refuge. So where am I going to be? If I'm one of these things, I'm going to be in a refuge. I'll slip out once in a while, but there's not a lot of development back here. There's no homes being built. People running around. It's safer. And I'm sure they're going to come out, but we're still, like you say, we're still looking right back over here. It's still within that 40, 50 mile an hour radius by the way the crow flies.
It almost makes me wonder that the reason they put elk back in Missouri is to give these things a food source other than whitetail and hogs.
Well, elk was indigenous to this area, and they wanted to bring them back in and just let them roam.
Yeah.
And it's working. I mean, I've seen them down on M Highway. Seen them, my wife and I would drive down to the end of M Highway and watch them. A couple of years ago, there was some young ones laying out there with the mamas. And Peck Ranch is just right behind it, just right over the ridge. And you get down around Pin Oak, if it ain't tourist season and there ain't a bunch of people out there floating and running their boats, 2 or 3 months out of the year, there ain't nobody down there. They got the run of the place.
Yeah, it's a haven for them, and I believe like with these conservation areas or refuge areas, it's a safe place for them. It's not someone's private land.
No, and conservation isn't going to allow anybody to get on there to hunt or to build. They're going to be left alone, and they're going to make sure that there ain't nobody out there hunting. So the conservation's kind of covering their hind end, whether they realize it or not.
Yeah.
But I kind of believe, though, that I have to believe anybody that's been a game warden or conservation for 10, 15, 20 years have heard reports of this kind of stuff, been out there in the woods. They may not know what's out there, but they believe something is out there. They almost have to. You can't tell me that somebody that their job is to be in the woods doesn't know any more than just deer and elk. There's got.
Yeah, I'm sure some of them have ran into them.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if someone that's worked for the Forest Service 40 years has never seen or heard anything, but then, you know, there's some that have, and they know about it.
They will not confirm nor deny. You know, and given their position, I guess I can understand that.
Right.
But they can tell me what they want. I know better.
Yeah.
But
they know what they know, and we know what we know.
yeah, and we all know that we know.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I mean, they used to say that there's no mountain lions.
Yeah. They also tell you that there wasn't no armadillos.
I don't know who it was the other day. They said conservation says that ticks won't jump off trees onto you. I've seen them leap off of leaves onto people, and they can jump. I mean, they can spring into action. I don't know who told me that, but someone did the other day.
Well, they used to tell you there ain't no such thing as a black panther. I've seen black panther. I've seen it from a distance, but I've seen it. My grandpas have seen it. They're around here.
People said they're actually leopards, the black ones. I don't know. I'm not sure.
I've always just known them being a black panther.
That's what I thought.
Maybe an offspring from what they call a cougar or a mountain lion, whatever. Depending on where you're from is going to determine what you call it. But they're around. But like I said, we're talking about a bunch of people that, if you tell them you got armadillos in the yard up to about 10 years ago, they'd tell you that there wasn't no armadillos around here. They're in Texas. Well, you hit them on the
eagles.
Yeah.
He used to tell you didn't see no eagle.
Yeah. Yeah, then you go down the river and you see 30 of them flying up there,
The jet black Sasquatch I seen, basically it was in June. I was picking chanterelle mushrooms, and I'd had strange experiences on the property as far as like being whistled. 3 different individuals like surrounded me, and I heard loud, sharp whistles, like real loud. And I just thought, what the heck is that? I went back up about an hour later that day, and then I see these 2 balls of light floating through the woods right when it's getting dark. So I got this freaky feeling. But yeah, I was having activity in that time frame. And I knew someone was on the property. I thought it was like trespassers, crackheads, someone,
Right.
Someone was watching me. But whenever I was picking chanterelle mushrooms that day, it was a summer day, super nice day, probably around 11 a.m. And I was getting back towards my house coming out of the woods, and I thought I heard something, like something rustled in the leaves. It sounded like a bird, like a robin hopping on the forest floor, like a squirrel. But by that point, I was paranoid because I knew something was around, and I was looking. I didn't see anything, so I kept walking down the chalk road going back to my house. I heard it again. So I looked over, and what I thought originally was a black stump, because whenever I looked over prior to that, I didn't see anything, and I saw something black, and I was like, that's a stump. So I kept walking. Well, that stump got up, and it started walking. And it was a jet black Sasquatch, anywhere from like 6 to 8 feet tall. And he was coal black. He looked over at me a few times as he walked through the woods, just like the Patterson-Gimlin footage, just like that. It didn't look like that. It looked similar, but it didn't look exactly like that. But he looked over at me, kind of gave me the cold shoulder, and he didn't run or anything. He just walked. He just got up and walked. He had these white stripes going down his back, like from his shoulder blade to right above his butt. He had 2 of them, and it reminded me of like a skunk or a lemur.
Yeah.
I was like, man, that's unusual. I stood there and watched it for about anywhere from like 5 to 8 seconds. And he walked through the oak trees. And this is what I wanted to share with you. When he walked on those oak leaves, he didn't make any noise. I mean, it was dead silent. That's what blew my mind. And when he went into the cedar trees out of the oaks, he disappeared.
Yeah.
That freaked me out. So I took off running back towards my house because I could already kind of see the parking lot. Went through the yard because he was going this way through the woods. So I was trying to cut him off because I couldn't believe what I'd seen. But whenever I stepped over the fence back in the woods in the direction that I knew he was going in, I couldn't see him. And I was standing there, everything was quiet, but I could hear him. He started huffing. And it sounded like a horse. You know, like whenever a horse breathes out, it's like,
Yeah.
sounded like that. It wasn't a deer, like it wasn't like a deer blowing. It was like a horse exhaling. Like you could tell it has big set of lungs.
Right.
But yeah, that's what I wanted to share with you was just this thing walking through the woods was dead silent. And that's what blew my mind the most. Something that big walking on crunchy oak leaves was just
Well, that's
quiet.
what I was saying earlier. Something that big can be that elusive and be that stealthy. And if you're sitting out there in the middle of the woods, in the middle of a bunch of dead oak leaves, if you're out there deer hunting, the thing could walk up, tap you on the shoulder, and you'd never even hear it come up.
Exactly. Yeah.
But if they made a lot of sound and tore up a lot just trying to get through the woods, they would have been noticed a long time ago.
Yeah, it seems like they let people know that they're there, whether they push over a tree, wood knock, or
Yeah.
people claim they hear like a bulldozer moving towards them. I think they're letting you know because when they walk through the woods, it's dead silent.
Yeah. They'll let you know if they want you to know. Whether it be having a rock thrown at you or being thrown in your direction. Now, one thing I was going to tell you, when we were children, that place we lived over on H Highway, the folks that owned the place, we were renting it from them. Well, their buddy came down and was gonna hunt or at least camp, and he had an old pickup truck with a camper shell on it, and he was just outside of the yard in the parking lot, and he's staying down there that night. We got up the next morning and he was gone, but he came back in and he said something came at him that night, bum rushed his truck and caved the side of that pickup truck in. Just about, he thought it was going to roll the truck. He jumped in that pickup truck, jumped up in the front, and he took off. When he came back the next morning, that was just to collect his stuff that he was camping. He was using for camping. But when he came in that morning, I thought it was a nice pickup truck, nice little camper shell. But when he came back the next day, the side of that thing had been caved in. I thought the man had been drinking and just went out and maybe wrecked his truck. But something scared him bad enough, he said he'd never coming back again. He threw his stuff in the back of his pickup truck and left. But he was out there and something didn't want him there. And it was like it shouldered his truck. I mean, just came out and just caved the back of that pickup truck in. And that was 40 feet from our front door that night.
That's the thing. These things can rip a tree out of the ground. Imagine what they could do to you. What they could have done to you that night in the tent.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything that can take a tree, 6-8 inches around and snap it like it's a toothpick. Mm-hmm. They'd pick me up and throw me 60 yards. I'd never even hit the ground. I mean, just pick you up and pitch you like you're nothing.
Yeah. One of my friends told me a story. I don't know if this happened in Missouri, but a black bear came up to someone's campsite and ate them alive when they were sleeping. And I was like, man, if a black bear will do that, imagine what these things would do. And that's freaky because there are black bears out here and there are Sasquatch. So
Yeah.
Freaks me out camping in a little tent. You never know.
A black bear isn't going to mess with you.
Mm-hmm.
No, they'll get in your trash. They'll root around. They may sniff around, but you make a little bit of noise, they'll run off. They didn't like a grizzly or like a big Kodiak bear or something. Mm-hmm. These things are more curious than anything, and they'll spook off pretty quick. But we're not talking about a black bear. We're talking, if you have 2 or 3 black bear run together, mm-hmm. they're not going to communicate in some form or fashion. They're not going to organize a search party or a hunting party. And what we're talking about, whether you call it Bigfoot, Sasquatch, MOMO, whatever you want to call it, there's an intelligence level to some point, and they communicate, they organize. Like when I was out hunting, they had already figured out what they were going to do. One on each side, one on the front. And if there's 2 or 3 bear running together, they're just going to come at you. I mean, they're not going to organize it.
Yeah, it seems like they have a hive mind. Like they're able to coordinate instinctually, and they already know what to do. They don't have to like talk, hey, I'm going to go do this, and you go over here. Like they already know.
And if they communicate, it's a little whoop or a holler, or kind of like a wolf. No, a wolf. They communicate. Just a growl or a bark or something. They'll let each one know what they're going to do. They'll organize and separate away the weaker ones. I mean, they know what they're doing.
Reminds me of like killer whales.
Yeah.
Like orcas. And that's what they say. Like Sasquatch use infrasound.
Yeah.
So maybe they use it to communicate, kind of like whales or dolphins or.
Yeah.
I don't know.
There's a whole lot of unknown, man.
There is.
That's the intriguing part about it, and that's what has for years drawn me to wanting to know more about it. If I could go out in the woods, leave my phone, leave my camera, leave my rifle. If I knew I could walk out in the woods and see one of them, and if I could just let it know in some way, all I want to do is just see you. For my own personal satisfaction, I just got to know. If it would just walk out, hang out for a few seconds, kind of like, like what you had seen. Not that I don't think they exist, but I'd love to be able to see one.
Make it concrete.
Yeah, that way I know that I've seen it. Whether anybody believe me or not, that would be just for me,
What do you think they are? You think it's an unknown primate? Giant from the Bible?
No.
A different type of human? What do you think?
I don't know. I believe it's its own. It's its own kind of creature, however you want to refer to it. Kind of like the bear. There are different types of bears. I believe there's different types of what you call Sasquatch. Some areas may be bigger, like the Kodiak bear is a lot bigger than our black bear, but it's still a bear. I believe that they may not be as big here as if they are, say, in Washington State. It's almost like they're an indigenous people that's already lived here for thousands of years. They just kind of went back into the woods once people started coming around. I don't know. I don't believe they're an offspring from a monkey. I don't believe they're an offspring from people. I believe they're close, but I don't believe that they're going to have the same DNA. I think they are their own race, their own creation. Not that they created themselves, but they are a creation of their own.
Yeah, that's a good point. They're like a different type of people, but even within the Sasquatch, like there's different types of Sasquatch.
Right.
And that's kind of what I've heard. Like there's some that look like trolls, some that look like primates, some that look really human-like.
Yeah.
And some that people can't even describe.
Yeah, it's well, you got, like down south, you got the skunk ape. Sasquatch, as far as I'm concerned. Same doggone thing. It's the same kind of thing, different name. But I don't know.
Yeah, there's all kinds of names out there, like mountain giants, feral people, ape devils.
Yeah.
I mean, there's all kinds of names.
It just depends on what your grandma and grandpa called it, 60, 70 years ago. What they called it is what I know it as.
Yeah, that's the Yowie, that's the Yeti, that's the Rougarou.
Right.
I mean, there's so many different names, and it seems like they're a global thing. Like you'll find them in the Himalayan mountains, in Australia, probably Indonesia. Who knows? Probably New Zealand, the UK.
Yeah.
They're everywhere. China, Russia.
Yeah, I've watched the documentaries and stuff on television, different things, different places, and from the Yeti and
I think it's the same thing that we got here.
I believe it is. They may be larger, maybe a bigger build, depending on the area that they come from and the climate that they're in. They're going to have to be able to function in it and around it. Of course, if you're talking about up in the Himalayas, they're going to have a lot more hair all over them. They're going to stay warmer. I don't know, but I believe they are I believe they are their own species. Just kind of like we are. I mean, we're human. We got people that live in Indonesia, Australia. We are our own creature, so to speak, just like they are.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, just be careful when you hunt in the woods again, especially since you're still living in the same area, correct?
Yeah.
You might run into these things again, and hopefully not the same clan, because if they remember you,
Oh, I know. Yeah.
they're gonna know who you are.
Yeah. I believe that they would, even though a lot grayer, a few more whiskers.
Do you think that one died that you shot?
I don't think it did. No, I think it was more of a shoulder wound. It wasn't a chest. It wasn't dead center chest. No, I don't think it did.
Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate you sharing your experiences with me, and it's pretty terrifying to know they're out here, and I'm going to be camping out there tonight, so now I'll have something to think about.
Yeah. Well, you've already been thinking about it. I mean, otherwise you wouldn't be doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. But now I'm going to be thinking about holding my rifle and shooting at shadows.
The rifle is just going to make it mad. It better be a big one.
Well, I told David, I was like, man, last night I was thinking about the LBL story, the Land Between the Lakes story. I don't know if you ever heard that one, but it's a pretty gory story. And it was the same setup we got out there with the campers in the middle of the woods. But basically, a family went out in Kentucky and they camped. I think they pulled up and they were only there for 5 minutes. But these canine creatures, I don't know if it's Dogman or a hellhound, they came out and just like bit the guy on the back of the neck and started tearing the family apart. They tried shooting them, but it killed the family. The little boy, he got up underneath the vehicle and hid underneath the vehicle. It was like one of those motorhomes.
Yeah.
And apparently it was a gory sight. The little boy was the only one that survived. So you never know. And they were only there 5 minutes.
Yeah, something didn't want them there bad enough to get rid of them quick.
That's the scary thing, is knowing that it's not just Bigfoot out there. There's other things out in the woods.
Well, one thing you can rest assured on, if there is something out there, you're going to be okay because they're okay. If it was anything that was going to be extremely aggressive or to push back, it would have already been pushing back.
Yeah.
I believe if there's anything out there tonight, it's going to know you're there. And it might get your attention, but that's all it's going to do. Maybe throw a rock. You might hear something snap once this wind dies down. But if there's anything aggressive out there, they would already know it's aggressive. It's to push back when you're in trouble. That's the way I think. If it throws a rock and you start throwing rocks back at it, it's going to grab a bigger rock.
Yeah.
I just think that they want to be left alone. I believe they're curious. And you might be sleeping tonight and have something sniffing around your tent, but I wouldn't worry about anything.
Yeah. It's the wind that's got me spooked, because you won't be able to hear it till it's already up on you. Even if they do wood knocks or break a tree, it's like, I wonder if that was the wind breaking that limb.
Yeah. Now, you got a camper up there or a tent?
We got 2 campers. Well, David does.
Well, you should be all right. But it wouldn't concern me as much as that Kentucky incident.
Yeah. Absolutely. You just never know what could happen.
Yeah.
And if it was Bigfoot, you're a Bigfoot survivor, because things could have went very wrong.
Yeah, it could have went south real quick.
Yeah. So, yeah, it does shock me that you didn't hear them scream when you shot.
No.
Or they didn't try to retaliate. So it's just really hard to predict what these things are going to do you know, because you hear that a lot. You know, people say if you shoot one of them, they're going to make you pay. And in your case, you shot one of them, and they just got out of there.
Yeah, they at least hid enough that we could get out of there.
It's kind of like a home invasion. They thought no one was home. Somebody got shot, and they took off.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and the other things that we dealt with, just curious. I mean, when I was a kid growing up, of course we were children. They knew we were children. We wasn't aggressive. We wasn't acting aggressive. We were just kids playing outside. And I believe that it was a juvenile that was just curious. Yeah. And I think that's a lot of what's around here is they're curious.
Yeah, I think they've been messing with you and your family for quite some time.
Yeah. I haven't seen anything or heard anything in a lot of years. Things like that never really, they intrigued me. And of course it brings me, it heightens my awareness. But I never have felt the need to run, except for that one time up on the hill, you know, when we were out hunting. But I don't believe they were aggressive in general. There were just a lot of people up there, and they wanted them out of the way, and we were there as well. They were aggressive because they felt like they had to be. If somebody's just out there hunting, I don't think it would have been, or just walking through the woods, I don't believe they would have been aggressive. They were aggressive, I believe, because they felt like they had to be. They were being invaded. Because you got 4 or 5 campers up through there in a tent and a bunch of people hooping and hollering, and I mean, it's deer season.
Yeah, something ticked them off.
Yep. And that's what they were just pushing back. But I don't think that they would have naturally just been aggressive if they seen me out in the woods to come up and try to, you know, rip me apart.
What do you think made them the most, like, angry? Like,
I
was
think-
it the people talking? Were people drinking, or was it just your presence alone?
I think just the presence alone. We were in their kitchen. That's where everybody was there to hunt. That's where the deer were. We were in the area, they didn't want us there.
Yeah. It makes me mad whenever I'm hunting and people are like playing music or being loud, or they walk right in front of my stand in the middle of deer season. It's like, what are you doing out here? Now I'm not gonna see anything. Maybe they have that same mentality. Like,
I'm sure.
dang it. You know?
Yeah.
They can't help themselves.
And you get enough people down there, you get 1 or 2 people hunting around, just one thing. You get a half a dozen, now it's time to say something.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I see out there. I mean, that's kind of the way I see it, is 1 or 2 people maybe, because there's people down there hunting all the time, you know, at least through deer season.
We're trespassing on their land, basically.
Yeah, we were in the kitchen. That's where they get their food.
Yeah,
And they had enough. It was time to start pushing back.
absolutely.
Because you go another 10 miles down that road, you start getting into houses. You never hear of anybody that's been hurt or killed or anything. And when I was a kid growing up, those stories I was telling you about where, you know, I was playing in the creek and all this stuff. My daughter lived from here to your cattle guard, from that driveway. She lived there for 7 years. And I never talked to her about it because I didn't want to spook her. I mean, my daughter and my 2 granddaughters and my son-in-law lived there. And I thought if they ever say anything, I'm going to talk to them. If they ever get scared and they come talk to me, I'll see. You know, I'll talk to them. Well, it wasn't until they moved out several months ago and they bought themselves a house in town. That's when I started asking her if she ever heard anything, seen anything. Every once in a while the dogs would bark. Other than that, you know, just nothing. Then I started telling her these stories. And she said, well, why didn't you say anything then? I said, it was scared the daylights out of you. And if they wasn't messing with you, there's no reason to scare you. But it was all the same tree line. Like I say, from here to the cattle guard is where we stood out there waiting on the bus when the rocks started coming down, where my brother found that cow's tongue. And just across the road is where all this stuff happened. But my daughter lived out there 7 years and never had any issues. But she wasn't thinking about it. She wasn't looking for it.
Did you guys ever find the actual cow that was missing the tongue? Okay.
Nope.
My buddy that's at the campground right now, he's seen the red eyes, and he's got neighbors that have seen the red eyes, like glowing red eyes.
Well, that's the 2nd time I've heard about it. I didn't know what he had seen, but he said they were as bright as brake lights.
Yeah, that's what Adam described. He said it was like brake lights. So pretty freaky. He said they were bobbing up and down too.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Chuck didn't say anything about them bobbing. They were more. He said they're coming right at me. So whatever it was in a dead move right toward him. So he just started shooting at what he thought was the brake lights, as far as he is concerned. And then
I'd be thinking occult too, like witchcraft or something.
Yeah.
If I saw red eyes. That's the first thing you think of is like a demon or something.
Yeah, and like I said, at 19 to 20 years old, and everything happened so fast all at once, I didn't have time to rationalize anything. All I knew, we was fixing to be in trouble, and I didn't want to be. The only way to get out of it, I got a rifle, use the rifle. These things ain't scared, whatever they are, whoever they are. They're not scared of me coming out of the tent 2 or 3 times. And they keep coming back every time I get back in the tent. Something bad's fixing to happen. So, yeah, I didn't think about the smells or if anything was going on. I wasn't trying to rationalize anything. It was more at that point self-preservation.
Unfortunately, our interview was cut short because our guest had to run home due to nearby forest fires. I certainly feel like his experience is attributed to Bigfoot activity. It seems as though the clan of Sasquatch were being very territorial, and they wanted that specific area. When he stepped out of the tent and went to the truck and grabbed the firearms, I feel like these things moved in, so he was not able to make the next move. I hear the description of red glowing eyes over and over, especially in southern Missouri. What is this phenomenon, and are these creatures able to self-illuminate their eyes, and is it possibly a bioluminescence that they're using? The area that he is describing has had Bigfoot reports in the past, and there has also been a giant skeleton found there before off of the Current River. The area this gentleman described is very close to the Killing Fields farm where I investigate, and it's right off the Current River, so I do believe these creatures are following the waterways and they're seeking out food sources. And of course, you guys know I believe there's a supernatural element to all this, and we'll just have to keep researching to figure out more. If you have not seen my documentary from the farmer at the Killing Fields farm off the Current River in Missouri, I will leave it up on the end screen at the end of this video. If you guys can, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and if you have a Bigfoot or cryptid encounter that you would like to share with me here on Sasquatch Theory, please contact me sometime.